When we were designing today's program, we thought that it makes sense to bring someone who could inspire all these innovators. And who better than Lorenzo, who has, over the last decade or so, has led one of the most successful inclusive insurance businesses in the world. So, Lorenzo, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you are incredibly busy. I mean, even right now, you are in a lounge somewhere in Singapore, I think. So we truly appreciate that you have made time for these conversations. I'm going to keep my questions short and step aside because everyone wants to hear from you. And Maya, you will help us keep time because both Lorenzo and I are really bad in keeping time. So I think just to get started, Lorenzo, Card Pioneer is an incredible success story. Over 24 million lives insured, if I'm correct, if they have not increased, more than $20 million in annual premiums, and all of it done profitably. It truly is a big, big success. When I was running an inclusive insurance business not so long ago, I used to look at your annual statements every year for inspiration. So just to start, Lorenzo, can you take us to the beginning? Like, what inspired Pioneer to start an inclusive insurance business, and how did you get it off the ground?
Right. It all started when I took my family, my young family, on a holiday in one of the remote islands of the Philippines. And we were going back to the airstrip to fly back. And as we went through this little town that supported the resort, I looked to the left and I looked to the right. And there were no malls and there were no big stores. There were just little mom and pop stores. And everything that was sold was in a sachet, in little packets, coffee, sugar, cooking oil, detergent, shampoo. And all of a sudden, I had made a recommendation. Why not insurance in a sachet, in bite-sized, affordable chunks? Okay, so that was that. But then again, how do you convince a board to support that? I always say that you've got to be a little bit crazy to attempt that. And so when I actually went to the board, I actually convinced them by saying, we do want to be an insurer of choice, don't we? Of course, the answer is yes. But we're competing with the AB corporate sector, which is a bloody ocean where everyone's competing. So if you really want to grow the market, if you really want to serve and offer insurance to those who need it the most, you have nowhere to go but down the pyramid. And that was the key at the beginning. Are you willing for us to do that? And there's got to be buy-in from the top. It is tough enough as it is to get things done without meeting tons of people in the organization who will stand in your way, not because they want to stand in your way, but because they think they're doing their jobs. This is the way we've done it. You don't have this, you don't have that. And at the time we started this in 2007 and 8, there was no data. We'd never done it before. There was no data to go by. But guys and gals, 5 years into it, 7 years into it of losses and other bits, we have data. Today, we have close to 18 years of data, which has been tremendous in how we craft, how we redesign the products. And so the most popular question I still get today is there a business case to go into microinsurance? The answer is, of course, yes. However, you have to be willing to look beyond the business case for you to get into it. Why? You're going to start by doing this, and you will make mistakes. You will make mistakes, and you'll have losses. And if you're just going to conclude to say, oh my God, one calamity, lots of losses, we did it the wrong way, it's not making money, let me get out. Well, it's not going to work. You've got to be in for the long haul, even for the medium haul. And in fact, our tipping point came after the worst losses we've ever had. We began in 2007 and 8. We had the worst losses in 2013 and 2014. Really bad. Our books went into the red, and that was the tipping point. So.
Wow. And I mean, like, so many insights there, Lorenzo. We often hear, is there a business case? We often hear, oh, we cannot do inclusive insurance because there is no data. But really, you need a point to start, and all these things will fall into place. What was like one thing that really made you succeed? Like, what was this one? Was it a partnership? Was it something else? Was it a specific product? What really made it click?
I would say the awareness that the insurance industry and insurers are not lovable. When you talk about insurers and insurance companies, we are not loved. People don't really like us. Okay? They think we are quick to push products, quick to collect premiums. We are very technical. We have a lot of legal gibberish when it comes to claim settlement, and then we delay paying claims. And that is the worst. No, that is not the worst. The worst is the fact that most of us have no self-awareness that is how we are seen. I think the first thing that we did was we realized that was how we were perceived by some of the market. We don't think we are that, but nevertheless, that's how we're perceived. Therefore, you have to, how do you penetrate that target market after you've identified them? You have to partner with the entities, the organizations that they patronize, that they trust, that carries credibility with them. Hopefully, some of that credibility rubs off on you if you work closely with them. So what are these? People will say, "So yeah, my God, it's so easy for you to say that." But who are they? Well, the low-income sector people will not get a loan from a bank because they have no collaterals, but they're going to be able to go to an MFI, a cooperative, maybe a mutual, and get something. So there. Number two, they will not be able to buy a car because they cannot afford one, but they will be able to save up for a motorbike. Motorbike dealers could be another one. Most Filipinos in the low-income sector will have a relative or two working abroad, sending home money and remittance agencies. Okay? And the list goes on and on. So partnerships and identifying the right partner. It cannot just be any partner because there are certain partnerships who are just after profit. And whereas it is not a bad thing, it is not an evil thing, I don't want people to think that. The term we use in microinsurance is not outright profit, but sustainability. You've got to if you make too much money, you're not giving enough value. If you're bleeding to death, you're not doing things the right way. You've got to make enough to be sustainable. Plow it back, answer for your GAE and your costs, and have enough left over. So that's one. So the right partners who share your values are key. Number two, we don't know anything. Go to that market, go out to the customer, leave your office, go out to the customer and ask them what they need. Have conversations with them. Sometimes we have more than one conversation. Some of our best products came from initial meetings with them, and then we come back to the lab. I call the office the lab. We tweak the product, and then we go back and do countless iterations, and then we incorporate their feedback before we relaunch. And that has helped us tremendously.
So I'm sure innovators are taking note of all the distribution partner examples that you've given, Lorenzo. And we often hear like distribution is key. I think you have cracked it in such a successful partnership with Card. But how do you convince them? Because I'm sure, as I said, I was in this business, a lot of startups. Even for them to even convince insurance companies is not that easy. But how did you manage to convince Card to partner to bet on this micro insurance, which was like absolutely new in Philippines?
Okay. There was a void. There was a need. Card had been one of the most successful MFIs by the time we met them, and they'd given out loans, and repayment of their loans was a high 99%. So tremendous, wasn't it? However, there was a gap. Each of these successful stories, when there was a storm and the business was blown away, they started from zero. Some head of the family passed away or got ill, and the money went to pay the medical bills. They had to start from zero, reset to ground zero. With the advent of microinsurance, they did not have to. It came in, it allowed them to resume, to rebuild, to continue in a much quicker way. So that was one bit we were offering them. And at that time, Card was a successful MBA offering life insurance. But then what about the non-life needs? What about the property, the businesses, the loss of income of its members? They did not have that. So we came in to fill in the void. But there are other things I do want to say. And folks, it's not just giving more commission and giving very low rates. That is not the only formula. And that really should not be the formula here, because if we want to add value and you pour it all on low rates and high commissions, it's not going to work. One of my favorite stories was the motorcycle dealers. When first I had to convince the board to do them, and then I had to convince the motorcycle dealers to do them. In fact, it took our best motorcycle distribution partner, the largest, it took us 2 years to convince them. Yeah, and so when I went to them and said, we have insurance, the first thing they did was, and I want to show it physically, they said, no, stay there. We don't need insurance. I said, no, 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 this has nothing to do with you. Oh, no, no, no. So we went on and on and on. And ultimately I said, how do you sell your motorbikes? They said 75% on loan, the balance in cash. I said, do you have any problems with the loans? They said, yes. The foreclosure and the default on payment of the loans is a high of 35%. And I said, what is the reason for that? Oh, there's a bad accident. They have no money to repair. They forgo the bike. They don't pay amortization anymore. They were hospitalized, so they'd rather the money goes to pay for the hospital. They died, just no one to pay. So we came back to the office and said, wait a minute. Why don't we come back to you and offer you a project that addresses all those needs: own damage to the motorbike, hospital cash if they're accident cover, and burial assistance. What do we do all of that? So, and worse, they said, no, 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 but that's all insurance. I said, yes, but that's not the only bit. What if we tell you, so that addresses the issue of default. What if we tell you all the repairs will now be channeled back to you to do repairs, giving you a new line of revenue, repairs and parts? And I think that did it. That and the monthly installments, because they said their market could not afford annual cover. And I said, how often do they pay the amortization? Every month. Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to piggyback off that. And so that has been what's happened. The other bit, if I may, that people keep saying, what do you do to convince people and to earn their trust? Pay claims, pay claims, pay claims, please. All relevant claims, all legitimate claims, you must pay claims, because what are they doing? They're buying a promise. And up until they've had a claim, they won't know what it tastes like. They don't know if that cake that they've bought is tasty, sweet, or spoiled. And so the experience with a claim is highly essential. And unless it is truly not covered, you've got to pay claims speedily, because that market cannot wait.
So distribution partner.
5 more minutes on the clock, please.
We have 4 minutes to go.
Okay.
Okay.
I can give you 5.
Sorry, I warned you, Saurabh.
And I'm a horrible moderator, so I'm so engrossed in your stories, Lorenzo. I also see a couple of questions, but maybe just shifting gears, and which is also linked to your journey. Today, of course, we are launching this community for these innovators, a lot of them in a very early stages. What kind of support do you think a community like GIIC should offer to these innovators? Is there something you wish that you had that you were starting out that we could offer to the innovators?
Yes. I think enough companies and enough organizations have attempted micro, and quite a few with success stories to share. And if these best practices can be shared, if some of the samples can be offered, then it will help these new innovators from having to reinvent the wheel from scratch. That will be useful. I think there are still a gazillion. If you look at the landscape study of the microinsurance, there's still a gazillion people who need insurance who don't have it. So if we can minimize their chances of creating mistakes unnecessarily, we should do that. Therefore, I think avenues such as the facilities that the UN is providing in linking people together and sharing best practices, or even consultations, mentoring and consultations do matter, because there's certain things that you will only know when you're in it. People always say, ask all the questions you want. Of course you can ask all the questions you want, only the questions you are faced with. But it's only when you're actually in the thick of things, when you're encountering pushbacks and problems and other issues, that you start saying, oh my God, who can I talk to about this? Because sometimes you don't think it's possible. But remember, someone somewhere on this planet, by some chance, would have done it. And if we are able as a community to link people together, that'll be marvelous.
Wow. Thanks,
yeah.
Lorenzo. It's like you have advertised you could be a brand ambassador for this community going forward. We will feature you in our ads. I think I'll take a really nice question that has come from my colleague Chandra, which is that low income people, and we often face this question, like low income people face a number of risks, whether it's health, whether it's business related. How can we cover all these risks by a single insurance product?
Right. You bundle them together because they have a lot of apparent needs. And whereas it could be 12, but you focus on what is key to them. And normally we go out to the market and we sit down with them. We sit down with the target market. We confirm that with the partners, the partner organizations. Is this really what they need? And for instance, one of the most successful bundled products we had was that we had with Card. I said, what do you need? And they said, oh, okay. We're in the Philippines, calamity country, calamity capital. Cover against flood, typhoon, earthquake. And while you're at it, fire. Okay. Next, accidents are happening very frequently. We need that. And some burial assistance so that the family does not have to restart from zero. And so we just said, if that is the core, that's what we will start with. And of course, then we tested the waters. It must be affordable, and it is, of course, accessible. And that helped because if it's relevant to them, if it covers a lot of their needs, very likely they will buy, and very likely they will have a claim, especially with a calamity. And if they have a claim and you pay, very likely word of mouth will put you top of mind. And then later on, it evolves. Someone mentioned Queen Maxima, and she was in the Philippines for a visit last year. So we took her out to this remote island, and nothing but fisher folk. And she said, "What are you doing about them?" And I said, "Well, we're giving them some basic covers. Are you covering their livelihood? Are you covering the fish pens?" Of course, at that time we were not. And so we came up with a product to cover the fish pens and the accidents and all that. But you know what? When we tested the market, the fishermen said, we don't need you to cover our fish pens. They're durable as it is. We need you to cover our boats, and we need you to cover loss of income. And that's what we did. So the product has been launched just last month.
Wow. I'm sure Sebnam listening to this will be very happy, who was supporting Queen Maxima a while back. Lorenzo, unfortunately, I think we are coming to end of our time. I'm sure everyone could listen to you like all evening. Your passion, I think your passion is unmatched, as someone has said in the chat, and it's infectious. And I'm pretty sure all the innovators are inspired as we start on this journey.